Hey, welcome back to the We Don't Know It All podcast. My name is Caden, and this is Francisco. This is episode 2. In this episode, we want to talk about the jobs that have led us to where we're at now. We had a lot of fun recording this episode.
Tons of fun.
It was a lot, but we also had, just as a quick disclaimer, we had some technical issues that we have not experienced.
Listen, shocker, but we're not perfect. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't, honestly, we love having these conversations live and recorded because they're way more authentic.
Yeah.
We don't have to just pretend like we're hearing something for the first time.
And that's exactly why we're not re-recording this.
Yes.
If it looks a little choppy, we apologize, but we felt that the conversation was really good. So
Yeah. So if this episode, especially if you're watching this episode, if you notice like lighting changes or little changes in direction at random moments, we tried our best to kind of edit around some of the technical issues. We promise this is not the way every episode will
it's
be.
not the norm, I promise.
But yeah, this is going to be a great episode. You don't want to miss out. Well, hey, let's just go ahead and get right into this.
Right.
Last episode, we talked a lot about the people that have influenced Francisco and I and how that's gotten us to where we're at. And while we were having that conversation, one of our friends, Mike, kind of introduced the idea of like, you guys should talk about the jobs that have led you to this moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That's a
good continuation.
Not a bad idea. It's
Yeah,
kind of
it's a
like
good
part
continuation.
2,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think that it's interesting because we've got two, I guess, extremes, you could say, between the two of us and our job history. Francisco is a few years older than me, so it makes sense that
Just like a year or two.
Just a year or two.
It's not that bad.
But it makes sense that he's had a few more jobs than me. But what's ironic is it's not just a few. You've had a lot of interesting different jobs.
Every side of I've done it all.
Yeah.
I've done it all.
Absolutely.
Literally.
And I've been primarily a barista or a pastor. That's kind of where I'm at. So, but I think we've got two ends of the extremes here, and I think that there's a lot of kind of cool conversation within that. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of want to get started with that, but I want to start with you.
Yeah.
Kind of what was your first job and how has that impacted you so far?
Well, I'm going to go about this the way that you'd go about it when you're filling out your resume, right? There's some jobs that you just leave out and they're just embarrassing, and you did them because you had to do them or whatever. It's a good learning curve and that's it. But I will start with the first job I ever had. And that was sophomore year of high school. I worked at Popeyes.
Okay.
And it was a mess, though, because I got my whole family hired on there. Like, my cousins worked there, my brother worked there, and we never got any work done. Like, literally no work done. But, nothing's changed. You're still going to sit there for 30 minutes in the drive-through line just to get 2 pieces of chicken. So it is what it is. But I guess I want to say the important part of that first job was it really taught me that you can buy things, and you can, I was a kid, I wasn't, I was 16, 17 years old.
Hard work pays.
Literally. Okay, I'm going to give my age here a little bit, but I'm going to give you my hourly rate, and you're going to be like, what in the world? You got to remember, though, guys, I graduated high school 2005. Okay. So this was 2003-ish, something like that. I was getting paid $5.75 an hour.
Dang.
That's sad. That's mega sad.
You can't even buy a movie ticket
if
you work like 2 hours.
You can't buy a movie ticket. You can't. Yeah. So, but a different time, right? But anyways, I started buying my own things, and that was like the cutoff, for me from my parents. And they said, we're never going to buy you another piece of clothing. You're on your own now because now you can generate your own money. And I kind of never stopped working from there. I just kind of kept going and going and going and going. And right after high school, I was going to Bible school at the same time, and then I was going to community college, and so I needed a job that would kind of fit that schedule. So a friend of mine worked at a gym in Grand Prairie, and the same owner had multiple gyms, and it turned out that they needed someone to open the gym at 4:30 in the morning. And it was all the way in Valley Ranch.
Okay.
So it's up there by, if you're familiar with the Dallas area, it's going to be up there by Irving, Capel, like right south of Capel, north of Irving, that little pocket. Yeah. But so I was like, all right, that might work because I can go work from 4 to like noon, leave there, go to school, leave there, and then go to CFNI, go to Bible school. And so that would work out. I mean, I don't know how I survived that, to be honest with you. But that ended up being one of the most interesting jobs I've ever had.
Interesting.
Here's the thing. The job ended up being the health club that was adjacent or connected to the Dallas Cowboys training like facility.
Yeah.
So where they had the big dome in Valley Ranch before they moved over to Frisco, that's where they were at. And so the whole point of the gym was for the families of the players and some of the players that were like B roster guys and stuff like that to go in there and to work out and to have a free gym, that they weren't being harassed and people weren't, going up to all, so that's what we did. And so I ran the front desk for like 2 years doing that solid. I don't know how I survived that. It was like 4 to 2. And then I didn't live, like I lived at least 35 minutes away. So I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning. It was rough, but I got to meet a lot of interesting players, and I got to meet here's the thing. I got to meet Tony Romo when he was driving this old beat up Tahoe. Dang. And the dude was like not the Tony Romo everyone knows. I got to meet T.O. when he got transferred over, and so we would have this area in the back of the health club where you could go in and get massages, and some of the players would come over and get therapy and stuff like that. And so we would always have to do special arrangements for T.O. because T.O. was already this huge guy coming from the 49ers, haven't done all the things that he had done. So we had to do special arrangements for him to come in and out. But anyways, those jobs were very interesting. And that was the one job that taught me that you can do it, but you also have to pace yourself or you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
So that job only lasted about 2 years.
Dang.
And I'm going to pause there and I'm going to go to you now so that I don't bore you guys to death with all the weird jobs I've had.
So I was trying to count in my head while you were talking. I had 2 paying or traditional jobs, I guess during high school or really before college.
Yeah.
And then in college, I had 1 real job, an internship that kind of paid here and there. But and then I left college and finished online to join the residency here.
Yeah.
And when I first did that, I got another job, and then I quit that job and started here. Gotcha. So those are kind of all the jobs. So what I'm going to do kind of to start this off is I think I'm going to chronicle my 2 high school jobs. Because I think once I got to college is really where a intentional shift happened, honestly.
Right.
These high school jobs were just because I wanted to buy video games and I just needed money. So
that new Call of Duty, they
exactly.
were $60 games.
That's what I'm saying. Now they're like $70 games. Nothing's really changed.
Let's go.
That's actually why I make a salary. It's to still buy Call of Duty games.
Praise God.
No, so my first job, I knew that I kind of wanted a job, but I didn't know. At the time, I didn't really want to go into the service industry. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
My first real job started, I guess, junior year of high school. I knew that I wanted a job. I didn't necessarily want to be working for Chick-fil-A, or if you're from here, there's a local place called Chiloso, and I did think about that because I really loved Chiloso in high school.
Get the discount.
Yeah, get that discount. There were a few places that my friends worked, and I thought about, but I don't know. That's not really what I was really interested in. And so I found out that there was one of the dads at my school. I went to a small private school here in Wiley. It was called Wiley Preparatory Academy. I mean, like I graduated with a class of, I think it was 24 or 25.
That's wild.
Yeah. And each class was about that. Now they're a little larger, but even then, not really. It's like 30 people. So I found out that there was a dad in the school who owned a lighting business, I guess you could say. But like he would set up lights for events, backyard parties, so on and so forth. But the biggest time of year for him was installing Christmas lights and decorations. And so he would hire help, usually college students that were home for holidays.
Right.
But he would hire help to go with him to
Yeah.
install Christmas lights, either that neighborhoods would, not just houses, but like neighborhoods would pay him
Yeah.
to do like their entrances.
Right.
And that was fun. I can't say that I missed that job. There were some times when I probably got into it with my boss a little bit. I was in high school. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think by far the coolest part of that job was he had gotten to a point in his business by the time I was helping him where he was putting Christmas lights on the houses for the Dallas Stars players.
Oh, wow.
So I was at some of their houses installing Christmas lights.
Nice.
They were actually, the week I was doing that, they were in Nashville, so I didn't get to meet any of them. But I got to kind of walk around through the backyard of some of their houses, and so that was kind of fun, getting to visit a Dallas Star player's house. I couldn't take you there because I don't know where it is, but somewhere in Dallas.
That was going to be my next question. Was it like in Frisco, or was it like in...
Highland Park.
Oh,
it was in Highland Park, which is kind of what you would expect if you know the DFW area.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, Highland Park. At least that was one of their houses.
Right.
I don't know. So that was fun. That was a good job. But I wasn't there very long. I did it one season. So I did it about November is kind of when it really kicked off.
Yeah.
People putting in Christmas lights around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then I did it again to tear down in January. So November, December, January, because it was a seasonal job.
Yeah.
And then I kind of stepped out of that. And so I wanted something with truthfully, less pay. He paid pretty well. So what I was going to do was something with less pay but more convenient hours.
Right.
And so I started looking around. I had some friends who worked at Bahama Bucks.
Let's go.
This one right down the street here in Sac City, Texas, Bahama Bucks. And so I worked there, started, I guess, in August, that following, leaving January, starting the following August, my senior year of high school. And I didn't work there very long either. I've had a hard time staying at high school jobs. But I was there for probably about a semester and a half and then stepped out. That was a pretty fun job, too, just getting to make shaved ice for people. But I can tell you, if you have a Bahama Bucks near you, there's a thing called Free Snow Day where you can get a free shaved ice. And...
Really?
If you have a friend that works at Bahama Bucks, do not go to that day because the line never ends. From the day that from the moment it's open till you leave, it doesn't end.
Jesus.
So, that was kind of my high school time. And so, like I said, like a shift for me kind of happened in college. But when was that shift for you? Was there any? And maybe there wasn't one, but was there any particular point where you were like, okay, this isn't just a job for me. This is something like. I actually want to do this.
Right.
You know?
Okay, so in continuing with my story of the health club, I was there for the transition. Like, they had switched over ownership at some point, and the guy that bought it over also owned like a bunch of Gold's Gyms. I don't know if those are still around.
Yeah, they're still around. I don't see very many of them.
Yeah, he owned a bunch of Gold's Gyms, and all of a sudden they bought out like a bunch of them. And I went from like this guy that opened up the front desk to actually being the operations manager for the health club. Okay. And it just went like to another level. And I actually stayed on the job for like another 2 years because they kept moving me from health club to health club. So the last health club that I worked at was the one located right in the White Rock area.
Okay.
Which was really nice. It's surrounded by coffee houses everywhere. Yeah. So I really, really enjoyed it. But that job and that season where I was being transferred over from health club to health club, it started making me think like I really need to like figure out like what I'm gonna do or what I'm gonna and so because of that, like I literally quit that job. Just one day, like no plans to quit, no nothing. I just said I don't want to do this anymore. And I literally walked out, and I literally walked out. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from a friend. And this is the only thing that I would do other than ministry or work at a church. This is the only thing that I would do. I get a call from a friend, and his buddy that used to work at the same company that he works at was starting an engineering firm.
You've told me about this a little bit. Yeah, like airplane kind of thing?
It was the wildest thing. Well, he was starting an engineering firm, but it was a startup. So he couldn't hire a real engineer. He just needed a guy that was good around computers and that could pick up things fairly quickly. So he called and he said, like, look, I know you have zero background on this, but you're good in computers, and we know that you can pick it up, and you know you've had certain jobs that we feel like would work for you, like that would work in that area that he would need you to work in. So he's like, why don't you come in and just do the 3-day training with the equipment that we use and see if you like it. So I show up, and we're literally handling the cheapest piece of equipment was like $250,000. They're like lasers that do high tolerances and stuff like that. Like, it's just like, it's reverse engineering the whole thing top to bottom. And I really liked it. I really liked the math side of it. I really liked because I was single and young. Yeah. I could travel and I could go everywhere. And the guy goes like, look, I can't afford to pay you like an engineer, but I am going to pay you a really good salary. And it was a really good salary. I mean, I was young. I did, like, I lived with my parents. So I was like, sure, let's do it. And I went into the job not really having a degree in engineering, not really knowing what the deal was. And literally 90% of my job was flying from airport to airport, checking airplane parts and clearing them for takeoff again. Yeah. So if you're ever stuck in an airline and they tell you, oh, we had to switch whatever, and they kind of keep you on the plane for an hour, it was because there was a dude like me outside of the plane probably checking that the piece that was the piece that they replaced the broken piece with or whatever met the specifications of the whatever. So it's for your own safety. But if you're stuck there for a while, I'm sorry.
So let me ask you kind of an important question then, the obvious important question. If you're living at home and you're with your parents and so on and so forth, but you're making a good salary, what are you spending all that money on in that season?
The dumbest things. Because I literally, I mean,
that's the only correct answer.
I did save, and I did have, you know, and it kind of like I actually was able to start my business later with some of that money.
Yeah.
But I literally spent, because here's another thing, is like Latino culture, we don't really teach we're never taught how to save. We're never taught, like, go get a Roth IRA. We're never taught, you know, all those things. So I didn't know any of those things. Actually, my boss, his name is Sean, at that time, he's the one that gave me some of the biggest financial tips like that I've ever gotten in life, and I still live by a lot of those, which financially completely changed my life and kind of set me up for the future, right? But this is how I spent my money.
Okay.
I had a brand new Jeep and I had a Mini Cooper. I had 2 cars for no reason other than I could just have
one
them.
Gets better gas mileage, I guess.
That was around the time, again, I'm going to give my age here a little bit, but that was around the time that the Italian Job came out.
I was about to ask you if that's what inspired. I feel like once that movie came out, everybody was like, I need a Mini Cooper.
I said, I want the blue one. And that's literally what I did. I said, I'm going to go get the blue one. And it didn't have the stripes on it. So I was like, I need to hire someone to put the stripes on my car.
Yeah. So if you're younger or you just don't really care about movies, there's this movie from the early mid 2000s called The Italian Job.
Yeah.
And picture an off-brand Ocean's movie. Not really. It's just a heist movie is what it is. But I mean, it's done really well. It's a good movie. Yeah. But the getaway car in that movie are Mini Coopers because of their size and speed. And so when the movie came out, everybody was like, we need Mini Coopers.
Yeah.
Kind of the way Fast and Furious made everybody want like Dodge Chargers, you know, like the old Dodge Chargers. But yeah, that's kind of the Italian.
It became a thing. It totally became a thing.
Who was in that? It was Mark Wahlberg, right?
Mark Wahlberg. Yeah. That other guy that comes out in The Driver.
Ryan Gosling.
He's a great actor though.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So the Mini Coopers don't go that fast. FYI, they're not. They're really not. You know, it's all cinematography is how they make them look like they go fast. But yeah, I had 2 cars. I traveled. I got to go this is what I tell everyone, right? Because of that job, I've been everywhere, but I've been nowhere all at the same time because I would only fly to airports. I would do...
Yeah, like, so you went to New York recently, but you said that you've been to New York before, but it was just like kind of overnight, really.
Yeah, no,
like
I would literally fly from Dallas to, let's say, Newark or Dallas to LaGuardia and jump on the next flight back.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I'd spend 3 or 4 hours there and jump on the next flight back. Now, there were some cases where we'd have to stay overnight or whatever if there wasn't a flight or whatever, and then I got to sightsee a little bit, but other than that... it was pretty quick turnarounds. Yeah. And so I've flown a ton, but I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to try to see things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But now I have kids, so it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, it happens that way sometimes.
Exactly.
I guess.
Exactly. So let's see. Continuing on, right? After I left that job, actually, I didn't leave that job, which is, I think had the company not gone down under, I would probably still be doing that in a way. We picked up this huge defense contract. And this is what I loved about it, because it was so different everywhere we went. We would be working on an airplane part at one point, or we would be scanning. True story. Some dude with a bunch of money rented not the entire thing, but like a wing of the Dallas Art Museum in downtown Dallas.
Yeah.
Because there was an Italian piece in there that had the head of a lion on the Italian piece, and he loved it so much that he wanted that lion's head scanned so that he could make his like a dining room set with the lion's head. So he hired.
That is another level of money that I don't understand.
I mean, I wouldn't even. I have no idea how much it cost them to close out that whole wing of the Dallas Art Museum. I didn't even know you could do that. And then to get us to go there, I mean, it was expensive. Yeah. I mean, airlines would hire us. So to get us to go there, that was another expense. And then whoever created that custom piece, I mean, that had to have been super, super expensive. So they ran out the wing. I go out there, and we have this laser that can literally scan anything. And we create just a whole, reverse engineer it. We create a whole rendering of the lion's head, and then we send it off to whoever's going to CNC the whole piece and make it look really nice. But I went from doing that, and then I did planes, and then we did the job that took us down under, right? And hopefully Sean's not listening to this because he's going to cry with me. We got a defense contract.
Okay, so just pause real fast. Was your defense contract inspired by War Dogs by any chance? Also another movie?
No.
Just curious.
And that would have been cool, though.
I was just curious.
Yeah. So we get a defense contract. He spends millions of dollars on new equipment. We actually got more engineers. We did all these things. And so now the company is thriving. The company is like up here. Well, we end up going to this place in Fort Worth that I had no idea existed, and that's Meekum Airport. And so what we did there is we reverse engineered to retrofit private aircraft to hold missiles. And the whole point behind that was that these specific private aircraft didn't have a heat signature. Okay. So the problem in Afghanistan at that time was that their planes were getting shut down because of the significant heat signature, and these planes were going to eliminate that problem. And then heat-seeking missiles would not take the planes down. Yeah. So we got 7 aircraft that we were going to retrofit, and there's this huge elevator about the size of 2 football fields, and it takes you hours just to go down under there. But we bring the planes down because it was top secret. Couldn't take your phone with you. Couldn't do any of those things. They bring the aircraft down, and we're scanning for hours and hours and hours and hours, and then they bring us the next plane, and so on and so on and so on. Well, we had to get more engineers to do that. We had to get more equipment to be able to do that. We had to get newer stuff to be able to get the scale of the plane and to be able to do the job correctly. It was right around the time that Obama gets elected. And so then defense contract gets completely cut, and all of a sudden we're with millions of dollars of equipment, a whole team of engineers, and then all of a sudden we just couldn't stay up. Wow. Couldn't stay up. And so the company went down under. But then he went on to invent some crazy thing that sold it to Walmart and made millions of dollars.
So and Sean's doing okay.
Sean's retired, and he lives in South Lake somewhere with a ton of money. He's probably 47, 45.
Sean, if you ever watch this podcast, we would love a sponsor, and you have first pick if you want to.
Hit us up, please. Yeah. And the guy's he invents things. He's invented at least 2 other things since then. So
wow, that's cool.
He's got money.
That's cool.
The dude inspired me in more ways than one. And I think that happens sometimes when we come close to certain people that just inspire you in the jobs that you've had. Because,
It is so, interesting to me to see how like that job is so random,
Yeah.
but it marked your life so
Yeah.
much. And it's interesting to see or like even evaluate how the different seasons in our life, like
Yeah.
it's not, we rarely ever know
Yeah.
what a season is going to be or look like. And most of the time we have these crazy jobs or experiences
Yeah.
that you didn't even know were possible.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of hard to picture your life without that moment or that season. And I think that even for me, it's not, I mean, my next job was being a barista. So it's not like that's not some crazy job. I just think how I got there was interesting for
Okay.
me. So I moved to college fall of 2016. That's when I started my freshman year at SAGU in Waxahachie. And I was studying Bible and theology at the time, and which is great. But I had kind of some personal things I was working through in that season of my life, which I'm sure we'll talk about one day. But I was kind of working through some of those personal issues, and I found myself doing that in coffee shops because they were open early, and in a college town, they were open late.
Right.
And so if my friends were busy at a church or an internship or a job, I didn't have a job. And so that year. So because of that, I found myself in coffee shops. And it was always like, it wasn't Starbucks. It was like local places in Dallas or Waxahachie or wherever. And so because of that, I kind of fell in love with the idea of a place where people could come and be themselves and study and read or just enjoy a drink or just get something and leave, you know. And for many people that's probably a bar, but for me that wasn't, you know. For me it became a coffee shop. And so and then I was introduced to this entire world of craft coffee. Like you know, you're measuring every gram of coffee to make sure it's the same. And you're testing it every couple hours to make sure your customers are getting it. There's all these different brewers and grinders and all these different roasters. And it was a whole world, but it was fun for me. And it was affordable, all things considered. I mean, it adds up quick, but it was it was easy to get into it. And my friends enjoyed it. And so coffee became my world and arguably part of my personality, but besides the point. Because of that, I kind of had this dream of, I don't know what my long-term ministry is, or I don't know what I want to do long-term in my life, but I do know that I love this coffee thing, and maybe I can meet people and just have fun while doing it. So there was a coffee shop in Waxahachie, that was. There weren't very many to choose from at the time, and it was the one that everybody kind of went to. And it was called Fresh Market. And so I got a job at Fresh Market starting my sophomore year of college. And so I worked there for the whole school year. And that was great. I mean, I got to meet everybody. It really did light a fire. And I would argue that I now have a job that has taught me more about coffee. But at the time, like, that is the one that really kind of taught me all the like specifics and everything that really got me into it. And so because of all of those things, I really kind of started I had to evaluate, what am I doing next, you know? And so towards the end of that school year, I stepped out of the job because I was accepted into an internship called Youth Alive. And so this was kind of my other college job, I guess, that it wasn't really a job, but it functioned like a job. Like, I don't know that I was getting paid per se. He would pay for my gas sometimes, or this will make more sense in a minute, but I had a couple pastors give me some money as a thank you for visiting their church, or like things like that. But it wasn't a paid job, it was an internship. And so basically what this was, Youth Alive is a nonprofit that is connected to our denomination or fellowship called the Assemblies of God. And so Youth Alive, like the purpose of Youth Alive, do you know what Youth Alive is? So if you've never heard of Youth Alive, the purpose of Youth Alive, or what they do, is they're kind of like missionaries, I guess, like in schools, U.S. missionaries, but they go to high schools and junior highs, and they do school assemblies. And so I mean, depending on the state or the part of Texas you're in, the school assemblies might be different, but it's just kind of motivational speeches and really good ones. But I mean, fun, like games, motivational talks. But then what we do is we invite kids back later that night and tell them about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's these fun, almost like one-day conferences that you can have at your school. But the internship was more than just the kind of assemblies. We called them school assemblies because the guy who ran Youth Alive here in North Texas was Kyle Embry. And Kyle was also, I mean, he was an evangelist. So he would go speak at youth groups, or he would go to churches on Sundays. And so every week I was always in a different part of North Texas traveling with him. And so that was kind of my job. But Kyle challenged me a lot, honestly. Like, he probably marked a lot of who I am in that season because of his leadership. Because Kyle, so the first thing I ever did was like a winter retreat for a church in Midlothian called Life Church. And at the time, the youth pastor was Corey Webb. And Corey's a great guy. He doesn't work there. He doesn't even live in Texas anymore, actually. But Corey's a great guy. But Kyle said, hey, come to this retreat with me. I'm going to be the speaker. And then Nick Franklin, who was also traveling with us, who actually now works for Youth Alive full time. But Nick was going to be the speaker the next day. Kyle was like, you don't have to do anything. Just kind of come see what this is about. So from the stage that night, it's like Friday night or something, I was like, yeah, Kyle, that sounds great. Kyle gets up to speak, and he starts off by saying, like, hey, this is going to be amazing. Can't wait for this weekend. I actually can't be here tomorrow, so Nick and Caden will be speaking tomorrow to kind of lead out this retreat. I was like, oh, great, good to know,
awesome.
Good to know. But it worked out fine. I didn't actually have to do a sermon. It was just like, Kyle just likes to put you on your toes sometimes. But everything was great. But Kyle had this ability to force people into uncomfortable situations. But somehow, I don't know if it was wisdom or God or all of the above. But he had the ability to do it in such a way that didn't like leave you high and dry. You know, like he had he knew that you were going to succeed, or that he was there to like save you, more or less.
All the markings of a great mentor, like literally just push you enough, but hey, I'm still here for you, but I'm going to push you and push you and push you and push you. That's awesome.
And I think he truly probably would have let me fall on my face, but I also think he was there to like keep it from like everything falling apart. And so it all worked out, but I did that for about a year, and I was one of their shorter interns, truthfully. I think Kyle would have loved if I would have stayed longer, but that was around the time North Place was starting the residency program, which was kind of my next big life development. And so that's kind of why I stepped out of the internship, was so that I could join the residency program.
That's cool. That's super. Here's the thing, and hopefully you guys are kind of like connecting or remembering about your old jobs, right? But there are jobs that you could have had, and then they could have just been another job. But then there are jobs that have put you in certain environments and have taught you certain lessons that you know for a fact that there's no way you could have done the next thing in life without having learned those life lessons. And so it's crazy, right, to hear you talk about like your experience with your internship, and to hear you talk about how being in this environment of the coffee houses and that world that you kind of fell in love with, how that kind of took you from one step to the other step into the other step. And I feel the exact same way, right? Like, I do nothing with planes now, right? But had I not been around Sean and those lessons at that point, I would have probably never done the next thing or the next chapter in my life, which was to start a business. I would have, like, I mean, I am the first person in my family to ever start a business. Like, that was very foreign to us. And everyone thought that I was crazy. But had I not learned those lessons, had maybe you not been around that environment of like push you right to the edge and constantly challenge you and give you wisdom and give you, you know, all this knowledge, maybe we wouldn't have been as successful in this next step of life, or maybe we would have never taken that risk, and then you just never know what could have happened. Which leads to this next job that I had, which was the last thing that I did for 10 years, which is pretty much run a print shop. And I would have never thought that I was going to do that. I would have never thought that I was going to risk all this money. Literally, it's crazy how God works, right? Because he guides your every step, and timing is so, like, it was so spot on. I was working as a graphic designer after that for a little bit, and I said, I want to start a shop. And so I started from my mom's spare bedroom, literally. And then it went to like, okay, we can probably do this. And then I got married, and then I, on purpose, got a 2-bedroom apartment, and we ran the shop out of the 2nd bedroom of the apartment. And then that turned into like, oh, let's go get a shop. And we finally got like a location. And I said, if I'm going to do this for reals, I have to challenge myself and I have to quit my job. I would have never done that had I not met Sean, because I would have been like, I need a safety net here. But if I would have stayed on, my business would have never thrived. Yeah. So then I quit the job, and we go and sign this lease on this location. And then I find out that Christy's expecting our first baby like 3 months later. Hindsight was like, okay, great, because the business was already thriving so quickly. But had I known even 2 months before, I probably would have never left my job. Yeah. Probably would have never signed that lease for 5 years. I probably would have never done these things. So it's crazy how it sets you up for this next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then we ran the shop for 10 years, and we loved it. And I got to meet so many great youth leaders. I got to meet so many youth pastors, and I got to meet so many great leaders and mentors from all over the nation. Yeah. And I always tell everyone this. Yes, you start a business, and yes, you do all these things because you want to have personal gain. And I get that, because a business does have to make money, but you also have to have a reason why you're doing it. So I always tell everyone this, right? You got to have a reason why you're doing what you're going to do. And so in the Hispanic church, we don't pay attention to, like a really good flyer or a really good printout, or, I mean, just the way like we would print shirts for them and stuff like that. That wasn't a thing. So my job was, I'm going to come into a church that's never printed anything in their life, and I'm going to tell them, this is affordable. And I'm going to educate you on that. And I'm going to tell you, we can make your church look really good. And I kid you not, but I never paid for advertising for 10 years. Yeah. It was all word of mouth. And then it just spiraled into this huge thing where like churches were calling us. I mean, we worked with districts. If you're familiar with the Assemblies of God, they have got districts all over the nation. We work from districts all the way from California to New York, New Jersey, the Midwest. That's Kansas City, Chicago, like all those areas. Like we got to work with all of them, and I got to meet so many great people. And so it all started because I wanted to help my church. Yeah. Obviously, I wanted to start a business, and the entrepreneurial side of me wanted to do something crazy and challenge myself. But at the same time, like I wanted to help our Hispanic churches, and I wanted to help the pastor that had 20 people in his church and wanted to kind of step up his production a little bit and wanted to do things a little bit more polished and a little bit nicer. So it all came from there, and it started there, and then it just blew up. And I did that for 10 years, and it was fun.
That's crazy.
I don't know if I would do it again to that level.
Yeah.
We're still doing some stuff, but not to that level again.
Yeah. And just to clarify, you still, officially speaking, own the business, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We still have the business, and we still do a bunch of stuff.
It's just way less.
It's just way less, and we're kind of picky about the jobs that we take, and then I don't have employees anymore. Like it's more tamed, because obviously we have 3 kids now. We went from 1 kid to 2, and so I have to make time for them. And then obviously I work here at North Place, and so it's a challenge to run a business and do all those things all at the same time. So but we're still there.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go ahead and finish out your story before we get into mine, because I don't have much left to say. So now, and you can kind of go into more detail if you want, but I know like right now you are working within our communications department, paired really closely with production, so I'm sure you do a little bit there too. But you kind of help us a lot in that department of the church. So, but today I'm less worried about what you're currently doing, and I just want to kind of hear your last like few thoughts on what in this last season has gotten you to this point, because you've been here at North Place for what, a year and a half now?
Yeah.
Approximately.
About that. Mm-hmm.
And so what was kind of like, what led you to move here to North Place?
It was a series of things, right? My family was growing. That was one of the main reasons, right? Because we were getting to the point where, I mean, I was never home because I was at the print shop all day long, just like businesses demand time, right? And then COVID hit, and we ran the business 10 years out of that shop. So we were coming up to the point where we were going to have to renew a lease. So commercial leases, you renew them for 5 years. So we're like, do we do that? With COVID, we didn't know how bad it was going to be. I felt like God was closing some doors because every organization that we work with all of a sudden said, we're not doing any events for the next 12 months plus. And so we decided, like, you know what? It might not make financial sense, but we feel like God's saying something here.
Yeah.
We just feel like he's saying something. And I never like looked for a job, which is crazy. And we were very clearly on a transition moment from our previous church. So it weirdly all just landed into place where we were closing down the doors of the shop at the same time. And then there was that period of like everyone went into quarantine, and then you kind of start having those deep thoughts of trying to find yourself and praying to God about what's the next step. And so it went from closing the shop to praying and seeing what the next step was, to receiving a call from North Place, and then to some of the other things that were keeping me preoccupied with family matters were just resolved, and they got taken care of, and God's hand was all over them, to the point where it was just like, this kind of makes sense, you know, like it's very clear that I've never seen God open and close doors for me so evidently. Sometimes I try to ignore them, and I'm like, God's not opening that door, I don't want to go through there. But in the last year and a half of my life, I feel like God is like opening the door and shining the light, like, come over here, dummy, you know, like I'm literally opening this door for you. So and that's what literally got me here to North Place. And my family's thriving. I feel like they're receiving from church and just growing in this great environment. And then I feel like I've been stretched professionally. I've been, you know, I've learned a lot, and I've learned I've learned a lot of leadership, a lot of alignment, a lot of like how to do things, a lot of how to, you know, go from one step to the other to actually making something happen. And so I love to do graphics, and I love ministry. And it's like the perfect pairing. It's like having a church inside of my print shop 24/7, and my family gets to hang out with me. That's the best way I can describe it, and I love it. It's a great season for us. I really do.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When I left college, I'm just going to kind of finish out my story here. When I left college, I left because I was joining what North Place was calling, and does call, the residency program. So it was this new thing they wanted to launch, which obviously you know. But the residency program at North Place was this new thing that the church wanted to launch. And it's kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say an outreach, but it was a way to pour into the next generation of leaders. So they were offering to pay for your graduate degree if you would work at the church throughout the course of the degree. And so that was kind of the next season that I stepped into. Truthfully, I felt like I didn't have a ton of church experience, because the primary internship that I did, first of all, it was only 1 year, and it was centered around school assemblies and traveling. And I learned a ton, but I also knew like I'm probably going to be within the local church. And I wanted to know not just how to speak to different local churches, but also how to be within one. And so I didn't care as much for the degree, ironically, as I did the experience. I wanted the experience. And so I stepped into that season. When I did that, I also got a job, like a paying job, at a coffee shop in downtown Plano called 1418. And there's a lot I would love to unpack one day, like from that job, just because I think it was fun. I met some of my best friends, like one of my groomsmen still works there to this day, does all their social media and stuff. and the owner is really connected into my life. The only reason I got that job, I knew that I wanted to work into coffee because I always kind of thought one day that coffee and church ministry would somehow come together, and that may still be true. I have no idea, but
absolutely,
yeah. And so
absolutely.
I wanted both. I wanted the experience at the church, but I also wanted to learn from the craft coffee world, you know? And so I got this job. I applied to all these different shops that I respect. And I don't know if you're familiar with the DFW area, but I live in Royce City, which is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's like 35 minutes from the church. All of the coffee shops that I love or think are good, there's been some since, but at least in that season in 2019, they were, I mean, this is not a joke. The closest one was 55 minutes away, and and that was 1418. And so I applied, no traffic. No traffic. And I applied at 1418 and multiple other ones. And the only shop that got back with me was 1418. And the only reason that the owner called me was because he knew he also went to Sagu.
Wow.
But he is in his 60s, so it was not Sagu when he went there. It was Southwestern Assemblies of God Bible College or something like that. But he had heard of my dad, and he said, hey, I honestly don't have a position for you right now, but I just felt like the Lord wanted us to talk. So if you'd like to come in for an interview. And so I did, and he was being honest. He didn't have a job for me. But then a couple weeks later, they needed to hire someone, and he called and offered me the job. And so I worked there, and that was a fun season. Yeah. But what ended up happening was the way the residency is structured is that you are assigned projects that you work on for like 9 weeks. Right. Well, Pastor John, who was overseeing my residency, wanted to give me kind of, honestly, one of his responsibilities, which was operational strategy. Yeah. But he has his hands on so many things, it was hard for him to kind of oversee it. Yeah. And so he asked me to help. Well, the longer I did it, the more he kind of wanted to continue to hand it off. And so he asked if I would be willing to come on staff and kind of do that full time. Yeah. And so I left the coffee shop position really to become a pastor. Yeah. So that was kind of the transition for me. And it was right before I got engaged, so it made more financial sense. Yeah. And so it was like all these pieces kind of fell together. And I'm sure that honestly this season, like it's easy to talk about what led us to this moment, but truthfully this moment is leading us to the next. Yeah, exactly. And there's no telling what the next is. And so even for you who are listening, like I don't want to say challenge, but I encourage you just to take a moment. If maybe you're not a believer and you're like, man, I wish these guys would quit talking about church and Jesus. Right. Just whether you believe in Jesus or not, just look back on the different seasons of your life and just begin to like think, how has those moments or seasons or jobs led me to this moment right here? But then I think honestly, you should take it a step further, because I think you get a lot more out of the season if you begin to look at it as maybe I love the season I'm in. Maybe I have a hard time with the season I'm in. Yeah. But if you can understand that where you're at, job, family, passions, hobbies, if where you're at pushes you into the next moment, it creates a lot more responsibility now. Because I think that where you want to be has to be cultivated. Yeah. It's not like Absolutely. You don't just, there are moments clearly where you just kind of look back and you're like, I don't know how I got here. Yeah. But I think that you get so much more out when you do it intentionally. Yeah. And so.
Yeah, because even in the worst moments and the worst jobs you've ever had, right, there was still a lesson there to be learned. And so look back, reflect, think about those things and grow from there. And also I think it trains us to be more sensible to the ways of God, of like, this is where I have you, this is where I don't have you, or this is your time and your season for this moment, and this is where I want you for now, but your next step is coming. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure next time, by the time we get to like episode 100 of this thing, like Caden will probably be leading some kind of like huge nonprofit or something like that. I don't know about that. But these are one of those episodes that we'll reflect on, we'll look back on, and we invite you to do the same thing. Reflect on the past, reflect on the things that you've done, reflect on those doors that God's opened, and reflect and on the doors that God's closed too. You know, because sometimes those are meaningful lessons that should not be forgotten. And so hopefully you found this podcast entertaining. I had fun reliving all my weird, crazy, and I left out a lot of jobs.
Yeah. You realize how easy it is to talk about these things when you're like just going. We don't have all the time in the world.
Absolutely. So we hope that you guys really enjoyed this episode. If you loved this, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and we're gonna continue to record these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
You guys have a great rest of your week. We hope you come back for the next one, and we can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Peace.